During this season of creation, we are inviting you and your community to explore the many connections between care for creation and nonviolence. The theme for this year's celebration is Let Justice and Peace Flow, inspired by the scripture in which Prophet Amos cries out, "But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream." This is Amos chapter 5, verse 24. For those of us committed to the work of ecological justice, sometimes we can only see or feel a slight trickle in our tributary to the river of justice. At other times, we can be overwhelmed with a flood of emotional and physical turmoil in light of what's happening in our world, and we become numb to the violence. An exploration of gospel nonviolence during the season of creation then feels very fitting. Pope Francis uplifts the idea of an integral ecology in his encyclical Laudato Si. Integral, meaning whole, invites us to view ecology through the lens of making the world whole and consider how all things are connected.
As we consider the intersections of ecology and peace, we see that environmental degradation and climate change are, at their hearts, issues of violence that nonviolence can help us resolve. The exploitation of the earth, which has been seen most often as a resource for human use instead of having inherent value in itself, is an act of violence that has consequences for current and future generations. Pope Francis echoes the sentiment that the environmental degradation we see and experience today uses the same logic of violence that violates the dignity of the human person and all of creation. In his message for the World Day of Prayer of Care for Creation, he asks us to put an end to the senseless war against creation and stand with the victims of environmental and climate injustice. Jesus and St. Francis are two powerful models of nonviolence and reverence for creation. They invite us to consider how we can best live in harmony with God, our neighbors, human and non-human, and the earth, while practicing compassion and nonviolence for ourselves. As we personally navigate living in a changing climate, their witness serves as a wellspring of hope in turbulent times.
There are also many stories and examples of people of faith, particularly indigenous communities, who have used nonviolent strategies to work towards the flourishing of the kingdom of heaven on earth. One story of Catholic nonviolent action centers on Sharon Levine, a concerned neighbor who founded Rye St James, a faith-based grassroots organization that is fighting for environmental justice as it works to defeat the proliferation of petrochemical industries in St. James Parish, Louisiana. This group formed in response to Formosa Plastics, a multi-billion-dollar company, attempting to build one of the world's largest plastics plants in their community, a part of Louisiana known as Cancer Alley. To this day, Rye St. James, using faith-based mobilization and resistance, along with other community groups in the area, has successfully stopped the construction of this facility when they were initially told nothing could be done to stop a company of its size. The commitment of this community illustrates integral ecology, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor in action. The organizing and nonviolent action by community members has helped to begin a conversation around environmental racism, needed policy change, and limiting negative health outcomes for people and the planet.
Another example of faith-based nonviolent resistance comes from the Adorers of the Blood of Christ, Catholic sisters living in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. This women's religious community built an outdoor chapel in the path of a pipeline that was scheduled to cross their land as an act of nonviolent resistance. While ultimately the pipeline was built, their witness demonstrates the importance of creative nonviolence as a way of being in the world and the commitment to gospel nonviolence in service of justice despite the outcome. Both of these examples demonstrate two important points about nonviolent action. First, nonviolent is active, not passive. It includes interrupting cycles of violence without using violent means. Sharon Levine and Rye St James and the Adorers of the Blood of Christ both saw an urgent need in their communities, noticed the cycles of environmental violence, racism, and destruction, and creatively acted to interrupt that cycle. Secondly, these examples show that nonviolent action includes building and supporting systems of justice through community, policies, and practices.
This season of creation theme states, we are called to join the river of justice and peace, to take up climate and ecological justice, and to speak out with and raise the voices of those most impacted by climate injustice and the loss of biodiversity. As the people of God, we must work together on behalf of all creation as part of that mighty river of peace and justice. The path of gospel nonviolence can help us as we contribute our own blood, sweat, and tears to this collective endeavor. So we conclude with a similar call from Pope Francis in his message for the World Day of Care for Creation. Truly, much can be done, provided we come together like so many streams, brooks, and rivulets, merging finally in a mighty river to irrigate the life of our marvelous planet and our human family for generations to come. Take a moment to imagine your favorite river. And then think about all the water sources that came together to create that stunning landscape. Let us ask for blessings upon them. This quote also reminds us that the systems that permit injustice to happen were intentionally built over multiple generations. And so dismantling the policies and practices and replacing them with just ones will likewise take multiple generations, ongoing conversions, and daily actions. The vow of nonviolence is a spiritual tool and invitation to action that we have chosen to accompany us through this season of creation, to renew our commitment to integral ecological justice. Partaking in this with both our local and national communities allows us to reroute and refresh ourselves as we flow toward that mighty river. Each week, we'll share a video highlighting one part of the vow of nonviolence and invite participants to integrate it into their lives. Thank you for joining us for this communal experience of prayer, study, and action for this year's season of creation. As Pope Francis says, let us join hands and take bold steps to let justice and peace flow throughout our world.